Hello, you beautiful midlife maven. May this be the first time this week of many that you hear yourself greeted as a gorgeous soul, because it's that time of year when we celebrate love. The older I get, the more I believe that self-love is paramount, and the ultimate love affair is you with you. And I believe that at the center is self-sovereignty, which is what I'm exploring on today's episode of Midlife by Design. I'm your host, Lori Lisai, human design teacher and midlife coach, here to help you use human design to shed others' expectations and be who you came here to be. Let's dive in. So if you're listening to this episode when it drops, then Valentine's Day is coming up on Friday, and love is in the air, or at least being talked about ad nauseum. And I would love to use this pod as an opportunity to bring your self-love to the center of the conversation about love, because obviously, whenever we're thinking about Valentine's Day, we are mostly thinking about being in relationship with another. And it is so important for us as midlife women to prioritize the self-love that we have for ourselves in order to show up as better human beings in any relationship that we have with other humans. And look, this year has already been cuckoo banana pants, off the rails. And if you watch the news or are on social media or are taking in any kind of information about the outside world, then it's really easy for fear and helplessness to creep in and to even take over, and to have our nervous systems just feel completely fried and spent. And my personal prescription for us for that is self-sovereignty. I think that self-sovereignty is the ultimate act of self-love, because it's not something external. Instead, it's a way of reclaiming our inner authority and strengthening our identity by doing so. And listen, in my opinion, midlife is the time to come back to this, to prioritize this. It's a time to come home to ourselves and to recognize that our power as midlife women is indeed an incredible force for change, both within and outside of us. So let's talk a little bit about what is sovereignty exactly. I think that it's about trusting yourself ultimately. It's about self-rule versus letting the outside world dictate how you perceive things. And ultimately, it's this deep alignment with what is your inner truth. So, for example, it's in those small moments, it's saying no instead of yes, because simply something doesn't feel right. Or in the bigger moments, it's leaving a situation that you feel no longer serves you. It's speaking truth to power, using your voice, even when it feels uncomfortable, just because it feels like the right thing to do. It's you sharing your truth. So, given that that is sovereignty, kind of how I look at sovereignty, I want to connect it now to human design and specifically to your authority, because ultimately this is what helps to guide you to that self-sovereignty. If you don't know what your human design authority is, then hit the pause button and go to my website, www.lorilisai.com, and get your chart. Plug in your birth information and look to see what is your authority. What is your human design authority? What is your decision maker? It is what ultimately helps you to make aligned decisions. And tapping into this authority is going to, over time, build such a solid sense of sovereignty for you that you will feel unshakable. So if you have an emotional authority, trust how you feel. Trust how you feel once you've had time to process. Trusting how you feel in the moment. It's trusting how you feel over time about a situation or a decision. If you're a sacral, trust your gut in the moment. If you are a splenic authority, trust your intuition. If you are a heart or ego authority, trust what you want. If you are a self-projected projector, then trust your spoken truth. If you're a mental projector, trust your spoken truth in supportive environments. Use people as sounding boards. And if you're a reflector with no, quote, no inner authority, then it's about trusting your wisdom about the patterns that unfold for you and letting yourself really take time to feel into a situation. Only you know what the right answer is for you. I'm going to say that again. Only you know what the right answer is for you, because you are the only one living your life. You are the only one experiencing it as it unfolds for you. Therefore, you are the one who must be true to yourself. And you can get all kinds of outside advice. You can talk situations through with all kinds of people, but ultimately, it has to come back to you and using that authority. Start to practice being aware of when your mind is taking over and rationalizing, thinking that it knows better than what your body is actually telling you. I'm going to use Elon Musk throwing out the Nazi salute as an example here. Because if you, like me, saw what happened and immediately felt it in your body, that was like, oh my God, what did he just do? And felt like that did not feel good, or however your personal authority speaks to you. If you experienced that and then immediately or very soon after started trying to rationalize, like, oh, he's kind of on the autistic spectrum. Like maybe he was trying to, like he said, share his love with the audience. And I know I went there personally and trying to explain it away. That is an incredible danger. And I completely owned that and had to really spend some time thinking about my open head and how sometimes I can be easily convinced about things. And I needed to come back to understanding and trusting what I felt in that moment and understanding that it did not feel good. And I was seeing exactly what I was seeing, even when my mind was trying to rationalize in another way. So I use this as an example because it's, I think, a good example where so much of the collective experienced it. And there was so much conversation about it after it happened. And it is an example where it's one quick moment where we can truly feel into how our bodies experienced that moment and be able to reflect on, wow, how did that feel? What did my intuition have to say about that? And this is where we trust it and why we have to trust it over the external pressure, over the mind trying to rationalize. So that's one component that I wanted to touch on, the authority with our self-sovereignty, because I think that ultimately it all comes down to authority in every single moment, the small day-to-day moments and the bigger decisions in our lives. And then I want to touch on the G, or identity center, because this is the center for self-love, for direction, and for who we are in human design. And this center reflects your connection to your authentic self. And if it's undefined, it means that there's a lot of fluidity around who you are at any one time. And if it's defined or colored in, then it means that you're probably going to be, quote unquote, the same person, regardless of the environment or the situation that you're in. And there's no guilt to be had either way. It just is. It's just the design that you came in here with. So oftentimes I find that with my clients, midlife women that I'm working with, this can be a great place to get curious about what is happening in some of these midlife transitions and how does it reflect your specific identity center. Because it can feel really out of alignment during big midlife transitions if you are letting external experiences or people or just societal pressures influence your decisions that you make during midlife, which are oftentimes game changers. Are you leaving a career? Are you leaving a relationship? Are your kids leaving the house and you are reconstructing a new life for yourself as an empty nester? Just as some examples. And I think really getting curious about where you have allowed others to dictate your direction in the past is a very fair question. So my older son right now is doing a PG year, and many of his friends have gone to college, and some of them have decided not to go to school or are just kind of figuring it out. And the conversations I've been having with some of the parents are so interesting because even now, our young men and women are very much still feeling pressured to know what they're doing, to have like a very specific answer for what's next after high school. And it's like they feel really uncomfortable if they don't have an answer because everything up till now for 18 years of their lives has been so spelled out for them. And if they decide that college isn't a fit, or maybe the school that they decided to go to this year after the first semester didn't feel like a fit, so they decided to do something else instead. And they're taking a little time off to figure that out. And my question is, what is the time off? What does that look like? Just because you're not following the path that feels like it's been laid out for everyone doesn't mean that your experience is less than. And we so need to normalize every single type of experience after high school. We need to start normalizing. I mean, whatever, don't even get me started about K through 12, but we need to just start normalizing outside of the box experiences as valid experiences. The fuck around and find out version of life is valid. And that goes for whether you just graduated high school to you as a midlife woman. Fuck around and find out is a valid approach to life, especially if you're a 3-line profile or you have a lot of 3-line energy in your design. So let's talk a little bit more about midlife sovereignty and the wild woman, which I love to talk about on this podcast because, again, I think that midlife is the perfect time to shed the shoulds, stop the people pleasing, and fight back against what no longer serves you. Or, you know what? Don't even fight back about it. Just fucking let it go. This is the deepest form of self-love. And the hormonal shifts that free us from this estrogen-driven compliance that has been with us up until this time in our lives are finally giving us the space to choose ourselves. And the wisdom that we have built over the years that we have lived so far supports that. And we now understand that choosing ourselves does not make us selfish, it makes us sovereign. Choosing ourselves does not make us selfish, it makes us sovereign. Let that sit for just a minute. It's important. We need to let that seep into every single one of our cells and stop feeling like we have to be living our lives for some other purpose than what we came here to live them out as. Ending on a preposition, so bad. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the financial force of midlife women, which while I was doing some research for this podcast, I made this incredible discovery about midlife women. Look, society has underestimated midlife women for so long and continues to do it. We are being looked at as this huge consumer demographic. It's like, oh, midlife women are going through perimenopause and menopause, and what a shit time, and they are experiencing all these things. So let's sell a bunch of supplements to them and yada yada. I want to offer an alternative way of framing our demographic, and that is looking at midlife women as creators and change makers. We are not just consumers. And indeed, the force that we have within this demographic is so strong to create positive change. And this is some of the information that I discovered when I was researching for this podcast about the financial prowess of midlife women. So midlife women control, according to Forbes, 95% of household purchasing decisions and over $35 trillion in current. And we are poised to inherit around $40 trillion as part of what is known as the Great Wealth Transfer. And this comes from the Boston Consulting Group and Investopedia. So we are children of the baby boomers, and we are coming into the time when eventually we will be inheriting what they pass along to us, which will be this great wealth transfer. Some of you are already in that boat. So we need to start thinking about our identity, about the different words that we choose to describe ourselves, because we are not just caretakers and mothers or employees or daughters. We are also fucking economic powerhouses. We are capable of shaping industries. We are capable of funding movements. We are capable of designing lives that align with our values. So I want to kind of, bring in some of my Aquarius flair here. And I want to propose looking at sovereignty as a rebellion. We will soon be holding the purse strings to more wealth than ever before. And knowing that raises a really important question. Are we going to let outdated systems, societal conditioning, the shoulds, are we going to let those things dictate how we use this power? Or are we going to step fully into our sovereignty? And I'm going to give you a hint. Patriarchy is falling. That's just what's happening. It is unfolding before our eyes. And as we watch the chaos ensue around us, that is essentially, it's the patriarchy grasping to try to hold on to what they can't. And so this is our opportunity right now. We need to do it as the change is happening around us. We need to step into this radical self-love and start using our authorities every single day. And how can we use this wealth that is coming to us to model radical self-love for the generations who are coming after us? This is why I think that sovereignty is really both an act of rebellion and of self-love. When we have a solid sense of who we are and what's important to us and our values, then we are truly able to reshape the world. So, you want to change your career, you now have the financial leverage to actually do that. You want to invest in women-led businesses or initiatives that support midlife women. You've got the resources. They are shifting into your hands. You want to prioritize your well-being, your personal growth, your creative pursuits. You don't have to ask for permission to do that. If you are ready to invest in yourself with any of these things, that is ultimately an act of self-love. So I want to encourage you to, of course, explore your human design chart. Check out my reports and readings. I can help to guide you in this process. And start with this small actionable step, which is leaning into your truth and using your authority as an act of self-love. So I want to offer you a quick little thinking prompt. Think about a decision that you made recently and consider whether it was from your authority or made due to external pressure. And how did it ultimately play out? What did you learn from it? And if you felt like you made it in alignment with your authority, then exploring how did it really feel in your body? And how did it ultimately help you to feel more sovereign? And by contrast, if you feel like you made the decision more based on the external pressure, then how did that take away some of your sovereignty? How did it chip away a bit at your self-confidence or at who you came here to be? And I'm not offering this as an example to give you an opportunity for self-judgment, because this is not about self-judgment. It's simply about looking at this experience, this decision that you made, as an experiment. Human design is an experiment. This life is an experiment. You're just playing around and trying to be the best that you can be. So assuming that you did the best you could in that moment, what did that have to teach you about your authority, about your sovereignty? And when you notice in the future self-doubt popping up, ask yourself where it's coming from. Are you comparing yourself to others? Are you doing the should game, like I should be doing this, I should be doing that? Are you worrying about what other people are expecting of you? Are you trying to prove something? Where are you letting other people's expectations dictate your choices? Or where are you allowing fear to dictate your choices? Like maybe it's this imagined expectation and you're just letting your fear about those things dictate what you decide to do. If you want a deeper dive into each of the authorities, go back and check out episode 2, when I really did dive a little more deeply into each of the different authorities and gave you examples of what each might look like. And to wrap up here, I want to come back to the idea that sovereignty is the ultimate act of self-love. It's you choosing yourself. It's you choosing your truth. It's you choosing your power. All of those things over external expectations, over external noise, over the shoulds of the world. And if there's any time in your life, this is the time for you to invest in your growth, whether that's by listening to podcasts like this one, whether it's by reading books, whether it's by meditating, whether it's by spending time in women's circles, whether it's by following your inner authority, whether it's by joining the Wild Women by Design retreat, whether it's by truly stepping into fully your wild, sovereign self, This is the time to show yourself some self-love. It's February, right? Valentine's Day is coming up. So if this episode resonated with you, I would love to hear from you. Send me a message on Instagram or send me an email. Check out my website. And I also invite you to Wild Women by Design, where we will be spending so much time around theme of sovereignty. It really is the lived experience of what we are doing through the wraparound retreat experience. We're headed to Costa Rica at the end of March, and we're also working in community before that. And we're supporting you after the retreat. Because oftentimes, if you've ever been to a retreat or even just traveled somewhere on vacation, sometimes coming back into quote unquote real life can be like a slap in the face. And all of those things that you were able to do in terms of coming home to yourself, in terms of tapping into that sovereignty, in terms of using your authority to make decisions, those things fall away when we bump up against real life. And so this retreat experience is a place for you to practice that in community with other women who are doing the same thing, who are also fucking around and finding out, and helping to support one another when we fall, and thereby strengthening one another's commitment to actually being true to ourselves. So thank you so much for listening, and happy Valentine's Day to you. And I am encouraging you to lavish yourself in all of the ways that make you feel loved and appreciated this week. Woohoo! Spots are filling for the Wild Women by Design retreat. Imagine yourself in Costa Rica at the end of March in community with an amazing group of midlife mavens, exploring your wild side, laughing, dancing, rubbing healing clay all over your body at a gorgeous waterfall, being in sacred ceremonies, and lavishing yourself in the kind of self-love you deserve. Link is in the show notes. Choose the room that lights you up and join us for some online support before we meet in person. And whether you have a loving relationship with a partner or not, I am sending you so much love from my little corner of the world, as well as strength to let go of what no longer serves you, joy to fill your days, and the clarity to be who you came here to be.